Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining today. I know that it's super sunny outside, but thank you for sparing half an hour to come to my Lincoln live talk and hear about my experience at university in Lincoln and also my experience working within the media industry over the past 10 years. I am available to answer your questions as well, so do feel free to put any questions you like as I'm talking and going along in the question box, and they'll come through to me and I'll be able to answer those as we go. So I think before we start, it's probably really worthwhile just thinking about the situation that we're in at the moment during lockdown and everyone's at home, and it does feel like there's a lot of uncertainty in the future. In terms of making key decisions now around your future, I would encourage you to still continue thinking about looking at universities and thinking about what courses you want to take. There's always going to be something that happens that is completely out of your control. When I started looking at universities, there were the recession when I graduated, so there was like little job opportunities out there. And we also had a change in funding, which meant that the university structure had kind of changed for students. But all of these things 10 years on, when I've graduated, don't really matter as much anymore. And regardless of what is happening outside in the world, you will go on to have a great experience at university, and having that degree will definitely help set you up for the future, whatever it is that you want to do in your future. So still think about it and don't be too worried about making these brave decisions now. So I remember back when I was 17, I was looking at what course I wanted to study at university. And when you're 17, I think you don't really think too much about the future. I knew that I wanted to get a degree from a university and study and continue studying. I didn't want to join work at 18. But equally, I didn't really know what that meant. I just knew that I was going to move to London after I'd graduated and start my career there. So I basically looked through a ton of university prospectus to have a look at what courses they offered and really did my research. So I'd recommend just going through every university that you can, have a look at what courses are on offer, and just highlight any that stand out to you as something that you're going to be interested in. You spend at least 3 years at university studying something, so I would suggest having something that you are passionate about and that can lead to a career opportunity in the future. It doesn't always have to be directly linked, and for a lot of careers such as media careers, people don't always have degrees that are specialist in media industries. But it is something that I did. I wanted to study something that I was passionate about and also that I would go on to have a career in. So I found the advertising and PR courses that really interested me. And that's actually what led me to the University of Lincoln. I think the University of Lincoln for me 13 years ago was quite a new university, and they offered many courses that I couldn't find elsewhere. So outside of traditional degrees, I knew that I didn't really want to study something in science or maths. I wanted to do something that was kind of more practical, and advertising and PR really stood out as an option for me. And actually the only university in the country that offered a joint combination of advertising and PR was Lincoln University. So for me, that made my decision quite easy in terms of what I wanted to study. But then to find the location and where I wanted to live for 3 years, you do have to do a lot more research. So I would advise you to go and visit as many campuses as you can when that is possible, to make sure that you have a look around, you see the facilities, and you get a feel and sense of the town and the local environment and whether or not you can see yourself living there. I went and visited University of Lincoln. I live in Essex, so it was quite a long drive, and my dad took me and a friend up to have a look around one day. And for me, I really enjoyed it because I felt that the facilities were new. So I think for my year, it was the first year they had opened up the engine shed, which was essentially a huge hall area which was dedicated to students going into just students from University of Lincoln, and they have many events there, including nightlife. So for me, it just felt like on the campus there was a self-contained area dedicated to students. It felt really safe as well. As a woman, you do also worry about how safe areas are if you're not sure. For me, Lincoln really offered that safety. I just felt when I was walking around that I felt really safe. Everything is really nearby. So if you want to go to any restaurants or evening, if you have your university lectures, they're all still on the same campus and a quick walk away. So for me, it felt really, really safe. And also Lincoln is just such a beautiful place. I grew up by the seaside, so when I was looking at universities, I didn't feel like I was ready to go into a university in a city. I just didn't want to, at 18, make that decision to move to a city. I wanted to do that when I was a bit older and felt a bit more ready and that I had more life skills to be able to cope with that environment. So Lincoln for me offered a really nice alternative because it's still a city and it's still vibrant and there's still loads to do, but it also is just a really nice place. The cathedral's beautiful, there's lots of nature around, and also the wharf that it sits on. I just thought it was a really nice place that I could see myself living in. As I said, I already knew that I wanted to study advertising and PR. So when I went up, I went into the sessions where they have, sorry, I just got distracted by a question coming through. So when I went into a couple of like trial lectures they have, and you get to meet the lecturers and professors there who will be talking to you. And for me, the lecturers all had industry experience, and going into something that was quite new in terms of a degree of advertising and PR, I felt that it was really worthwhile having someone who actually knows the industry. It isn't just talking about it from a theory perspective, but actually a practical perspective of what that looks like. So I really enjoyed the facilities. I really liked the area, and the teaching staff really, for me, were kind of the three key reasons why I decided to actually pick Lincoln. It was also very affordable. So if you are from down south, you'll know that the rental prices are quite steep, especially for students. So in Lincoln, it actually was a lot more affordable for me to go and attend and pay the rent. And there's a ton of housing in different areas and options available for students. And it really does cater for that student market. And they really do take on students in terms of the community in Lincoln. So I felt that that was another bonus for me. So moving on, after university, I graduated in 2009. And as I said, I knew that I wanted to be in London. So after I came home, unfortunately, it was the recession in this time. So it did really limit the job opportunities available for graduates. A lot of graduate schemes were cancelled, or actually people with like 3 to 5 years experience were applying for the graduate schemes, and then the graduates actually were kind of forced out because they had this workforce that are applying who had more skills and experience than them and were willing to do those jobs. So it definitely was an uncertain time. So I did some temping work throughout the summer and kind of just waited to see. And I eventually applied for an internship at a company called M&C Saatchi. So within the media industry, there are many places you can work. So there are agencies, there's ad agencies, there's media agencies, and these are the hubs that implement and run campaigns, either from a creative point of view, a planning point of view, and a client management perspective as well. So there's different agencies you can work at, and then there's also things called media owners. So that would be someone who owns a platform. It could be ITV, Channel 4, or it could be more recently like tech companies such as Twitter, where I was lucky enough to work, and TikTok, where I now work. These are known as media owners. And if you work there, you become a kind of an industry expert in that platform. So people come to you because they want you to tell them all about that platform and how they can work with you for their brand and for their campaigns. And there's also the creative side. So if you are more of like the business side, there's a lot of creative opportunities within the media market as well. I haven't gone down that route because I wouldn't describe myself necessarily as a creative, but I have many friends from the industry who are in more creative roles who are just super, super talented. So if you're into graphic design, illustration, copywriting, all of that you can achieve through a career in media. So I started my career via an internship, and I would really, really recommend applying for internships and using that as a way of gaining entry-level experience into any role. For me, I didn't have much experience. I spent my summers working and a couple of weeks here and there, but that is what really helps you get a job. So I would say in your summer, if you can make the most of the time and get some internships and relevant experience, that will really, really help you once you graduate and set you on a really good path and help you stand out from other candidates when you are applying. You also find that if you go into a company and you do a good job as an intern, they might think of you when they have an entry-level role, and you'll be more likely to be asked to interview for that, and then you'll be more favorable because if they already know you and know what you're capable of and they like your work, then they're more likely to hire you. So I actually had a 6-week internship at M&C Saatchi. And M&C Saatchi is an ad agency set up by two very famous brothers called Maurice and Charles Saatchi. Very famous back in the 60s or 70s when the ad industry was booming. And they then had Saatchi and Saatchi, their agency, and then they started M&C Saatchi as their agency. Within that agency, there were different departments. So there was a PR company who specialized in beauty PR. There was a mobile who specialized in mobile data. There was the main advertising agency that had creative and planning specialists as well. But I actually went to M&C Saatchi Sport and Entertainment first as my second part of my placement. M&C Saatchi Sport and Entertainment is a sponsorship activation agency. So they look after PR and also manage certain PR campaigns for many amazing brands. So one of which was Reebok. And I used to run the press office there for Reebok. And essentially my job was to get Reebok into the papers, into magazines, and make sure that our products were in the hands of journalists and that they were talking favorably about Reebok and just showing the benefits of the Reebok sports products to the consumers. So eventually when they're making a purchase, they can see these reviews and go on to buy the Reebok product. So I worked there for a year and a half in kind of a dual role, working alongside the CEO and MD as their PA and also helping on the account stuff. And for me, it was just such an amazing learning opportunity. You have to learn everything and absorb everything when you're that young and you go into an industry, because you literally, even though you have your degree, you don't really know what it's actually like to work in that job. And you know all this theory about advertising, but actually the concept of how do you get a product to a senior journalist who's going to print soon and they need to take photos of your Reebok trainers in the next 2 hours, and how do you solve that and get that product to them? You don't learn that at university from degree. So it's a very steep learning curve. And when I took that job, and it was just amazing. We did some amazing activations. We had a campaign with the Sun newspaper where we flew someone onto the top of the O2 whilst he was singing a song for, I think it was for the World Cup. We also worked with Coca-Cola as a client, and they had access to Wayne Rooney and the actual World Cup and took that on a tour across Europe, and we were involved in that. So there's so many amazing creative ideas that I got to work on and see for myself. And it was just a fantastic, fantastic opportunity for me to learn and work with some of the industry's most talented people, and also work closely with the MD and CEO and get kind of an overview of what business looks like from the top down, which for me, I felt was really interesting. Then I move on. I'm actually seeing a question there from Lewis. What's your favorite period of time throughout your working career? So I'm just about to move on to that. After M&C Saatchi, I joined a small company that wasn't very well known called Twitter. So it was 2011. And I had a call from a recruiter one day saying, oh, we have a role at a social media company. And back then, social media wasn't as big as it was now. There was obviously Facebook. That started when I just started university. Instagram wasn't really around, and Snapchat wasn't around. TikTok certainly wasn't around. So it was purely Facebook and then Twitter. And I love Twitter. I'm just super interested in reading everything, reading the news, seeing what's going on, following celebrities. For me, I was just absolutely loved it. So when I had an opportunity to interview there, I was just amazed. I went for the interview, had a few round interview, and managed to get a job. And they had just launched their London office, and it was the first office they had opened outside of the US. So my answer to what is your favorite period of working, it is definitely Twitter. For me, it was just a fun job. The people I met were amazing, super inspiring, really hardworking, but also it was super fun. So I was 24 when I started there, and I was the youngest person in the office. Again, I did a bit of a dual role where I worked really closely supporting the MD and the head of sales at the time. And they were just amazing people to work with and work from. This leads on to another piece of advice I would have. Even though my career ambition was never really to be a PA for anyone, I actually really love the company Twitter, and I think it's good sometimes to just go out of your comfort zone and take a job at a company you love. It doesn't matter if it's not the role you love, but if you go into that company, you love it and you do well, then most companies do support your growth. And if you make it clear from the outset that actually I'd love to go in this direction of the company, 9 times out of 10, they will support you. And I was really lucky because my bosses at Twitter really supported me moving on through the business. So after a year, I got to work on a new team, which was called Amplify, and that was working with rights holders and broadcasters who had rights to content to then work with brands to pair it together and commercialize it. So one of my first deals was around the Brit Awards. So we sold content from the Brit Awards to one of their sponsors, who then sponsored the clips that were pushed out across Twitter. So for me, it was just super fun. There was loads of events going on. We got invited to them all. We worked really hard, but the amount of growth in terms of a personal and career opportunity at that company I experienced is definitely the best in my career. Following 5 years at Twitter, I really wanted to get some more industry experience from a TV side. So I moved to more of a business development role at Box Plus Network, which is TV channels such as Kiss, Kerrang, Box Hits, Box Fresh, and is also part owned by Channel 4. So I went there for a year, and they were launching their app across PlayStation, Xbox, and TV channel and websites as well, to try and get people to download the app and play their music and stream music through the app. So that was super fun. And then after that, I missed working on multi-markets. So I went back to a company called RTL, who own many TV and radio and publishing networks across Europe. For me, I've been really fortunate enough to travel throughout my career with my job. So I did a lot of traveling to the US with Twitter and across Europe, and I kind of missed that element. So I went back to a European role and then traveled across Europe within that role. And that was a really fun time for me. But eventually I started to miss the kind of buzz and busyness of working in a technology industry. So that is what I loved about Twitter, is you know the product inside out. It's super exciting. You hear about what's going to happen before it happens. You see the reaction from users. And that was the kind of bit I missed, the innovation. So when I knew that there was a new social media app that was planning on launching in Europe, I was super intrigued, managed to get a recruiter to get me an interview. And that is how I got the role at TikTok. So now I work on the commercial side at TikTok, and it has been absolutely crazy. So I think when I first started at Twitter, that kind of career growth was, well, not career growth, the way that Twitter grew as a company was quite well paced, because the times were moving and people were open to social media, and it was still growing at that stage. Then Instagram came into play. A few years later, it was Snapchat. Whereas by now, that market is just so busy, so booming. Everyone knows about social media. Everyone has an account across all of these platforms. So the growth has kind of been really, really steep at TikTok, which has been amazing because that also means I get to learn a lot as we go. I just want to answer a couple more questions we have. What do you miss most from your time at Lincoln? So I think for me, it's just having everything nearby and just hanging out with your mates a lot. It's really good when you do move to London if you choose to have a career in London, because London is a little bit like university in the fact of your work colleagues become your mates, and you go to work, spend all day with them, and then you also then go to the pub or go out for dinner after as like a way of letting go of the week and socializing. So I think being around my friends all the time is definitely something that I miss the most. But you can still continue that when you go on to have a career. Most cities are quite vibrant, and even in small places, I know that a lot of people with their work colleagues tend to go out and socialize after work. Best bit of advice you would give students currently applying for study at university? I'd say make sure you do your research and make sure you pick something that you have a passion for and are interested in. You don't want to pick some subjects that you're just not interested in, because 3 years studying one subject, if you're not passionate about it, just won't be enjoyable. So make sure that you do your research and you do pick a course that you'll enjoy. If, like me, you weren't really ready to make a decision just on one course, then you can actually pick 2. So I did pick at University of Lincoln, and that was one of the things that I love so much, and I'm sure that they still do it with their courses, but you can kind of mix together specialisms. So there were people on my course that would do PR and journalism or PR and marketing, and I chose to do advertising and PR because I didn't necessarily know which industry I wanted to go in. So just have a look and see what options you are. If you don't know, it's totally okay. Just try and make sure that you have a diverse degree and that it will take you generally in the path that you want to go in after you graduate. Best piece of advice you can give when coming to interviews. So my best piece of advice is always come prepared with a question. So always do your research beforehand, and always come prepared with a question at the end. So at the end, they will always ask you, do you have any questions? And always ask a question, because it shows that you are engaged. It shows you are interested in the company or in the person interviewing you. And it shows you've done the research, and your question will be what makes you stand out if everyone else has similar experience, especially from a graduate side. So always be confident enough to ask the question, even if you don't feel it inside. If you've prepared and written a question in front of you, you can easily just read that off in the interview when they ask you if you have any questions. So that is my top tip there for interviews. So I guess in terms of general career advice, I would say try and gain as much industry experience as possible whilst you are at uni, but don't worry too much if you can't. I didn't really secure many internships until after my university, after I graduated. So it doesn't matter too much, but if you do have an opportunity to take an internship, or you know someone who works at a company that you think will be really interesting to work for, then still go and still apply for it and get the most out of that experience as you can. And when you are interning, just say yes to everything. Any opportunity, if you want to work on this campaign or that project or be involved in something, just say yes. Show that you're willing, show enthusiasm, and show that you're really interested and capable. And as soon as they realize that you can take on these tasks, they'll get you involved in more things, and then that's eventually how it will end to you hopefully being able to have a job if there's one that comes up within that company. So do your best to say yes to everything. I would also say that it doesn't matter if you don't have a set career plan. I don't think I've really truly had a career plan where I decided when I was 17 that I wanted to work on the commercial side of a social media app. That job didn't exist. And in 10 years' time, when you go to graduate or when you look back on your career, you're not going to know exactly what job it is you're doing now, because it might not even exist now. So technologies move so quickly. The world that we work and how we work is changing as well. So I think over the next 10 years, it will change a lot. And it doesn't matter now if you don't have a set idea of what job you want to do. Just look at some companies that you like and that you think you would see yourself working for, and then apply for all sorts of jobs there. Obviously, try and keep them relevant to your experience and your interests, but don't be afraid to apply for something that maybe if they ask for 1 to 2 years experience and you only have 6 months experience, don't be afraid to just put yourself out there and just say, you know, that you need to have these skills, but actually what you make up for in lacking those skills is knowledge of this area or a real willing and thirst to learn. So don't worry if you don't have a plan. That's like basically what I wish someone would have told me, is that it's okay to not have a plan. And even 10 years on, I don't have a plan for the next 10 years in my career. I just want to work at a company that I really enjoy, that has a good culture. So it doesn't matter if you don't have everything figured out right at the moment and you don't know where you want to go. If you do, then that's amazing and that's fantastic, but don't worry too much if you can't. Also, my advice on CVs is to make sure that you keep them short, keep them to 1 or 2 pages, and also make sure that you don't have any spelling mistakes. For me, we've done a lot of hiring at TikTok where the company has grown so much. And as soon as I see CVs with spelling mistakes in them or words missing, it just really puts me off, because I think that that person hasn't put the time in. And not only have they not put the time in to ensure they get it right, they also haven't double checked their work. So if I'm looking for a role where someone needs to have good attention to detail, then you don't necessarily think that someone who sends a CV with mistakes in it has that attention to detail. So always double check that you have everything correct, and that you all talk about what experience you do have, as well as skills. So if you don't have experience, list out skills. List out times where you have shown resilience. List out times you have taken a task on yourself. List out times where you have been proactive. Anything, examples where you've taught someone something else. All of these skills that you learn throughout university are transferable into the workplace. So do make sure that you list them on there and show them what kind of person you are, as well as what experience you have. I don't think I have any more questions there. Does anyone else have any more questions for me? No? Okay. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining the talk today. I hope that it's been somewhat helpful and kind of given you an idea of media as an industry to go and work in, and also a way to kind of reassure you right now that university and the opportunities are still out there for you. And I still really encourage you to apply and think about your future and plan ahead. Next week, we have a talk from Dr. Fenya Ziegler, who has a really interesting talk actually called What Makes People Tick? And it's around unconscious influences and decision making. So actually a really interesting one for the advertising industry as well, to learn what makes people tick. So do join and have a look next week, where she'll be talking about what makes people tick. Thank you so much.